He didn't trip. He wasn't sick. No one rushed the stage. No fire alarm pulled. No emergency announcement crackled through the speakers. Prince just stopped. December 11th, 1988, Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Northrop Auditorium. 3,200 people packed into every seat, every balcony, every standing corner of that historic hall. Purple light flooding the stage. The air so charged with electricity that people would later say their skin was still humming an hour after they got home. Prince was 8 songs deep into the most ambitious tour of his career, the Lovesexy World Tour, a production so technically complex, so precisely engineered, that his crew had spent 4 days just programming the lights. And then his hand dropped from the guitar strings, mid-note, mid-song, mid-breath. The band played on for exactly 3 more seconds before realizing what had happened. Then they stopped too, one by one, drums last, and then nothing. 3,200 people swallowed their own voices at the same moment. The silence landed like something physical, like a wall. Prince was standing at the edge of the stage, staring into the crowd. Not at the front row, not at the cameras, deeper, further back, like he was looking for something or someone that nobody else in the building had noticed yet. His security team shifted. His manager, watching from the wings, felt his stomach drop. Because everyone who had ever worked a Prince show knew the one rule that stood above every other rule. Above the 78-degree dressing room, above the 17 purple flowers, above the no eye contact policy with crew. Once the show starts, nothing stops it. Prince had never broken that rule in 20 years. He was about to break it for an 8-year-old girl in a pink dress, and nobody in that arena yet had any idea why. But to understand what Prince did that night, you have to understand one thing about the man first. Prince Rogers Nelson did not do anything by accident, ever. By 1988, Prince wasn't just a musician. He was an architect. He designed every light cue himself. He approved every costume stitch. He built his set lists like a surgeon builds an operating plan. Nothing random, nothing improvised, nothing left to chance. His tour riders were the stuff of industry legend. Room temperature at exactly 78 degrees. Specific purple flowers in the dressing room, 17 of them. Not 16, not 18, 17. His crew didn't make eye contact with him in the corridors, not out of fear, out of respect for a man who needed complete focus to do what he did every single night. He was 5'2", and he commanded rooms that held thousands. The Lovesexy World Tour was his most ambitious production to date. A single continuous stage design, no opening act, no intermission, no distractions, that cost $2 million to construct and another 4 days just to assemble in each new city. When audiences walked into a Prince show in 1988, they weren't walking into a concert. They were walking into a world that one man had built entirely from his own imagination. Every second of it controlled, every emotion choreographed. He never pulled fans on stage, not once, not in 2 decades of performing. 3 hours before showtime that December night, his production manager Gary Levinson received a phone call from the Northrop's accessibility coordinator. A request had come in, unusual, specific. A letter had been sent to Paisley Park 3 weeks earlier, a letter from a child, and the venue staff had somehow heard about it and wanted to know if any accommodation had been arranged for the family. Levinson listened, made a note, and then made a decision he would spend the rest of that night regretting. He decided not to tell Prince. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Prince had already read the letter. 40 minutes before he walked on stage, alone in his dressing room, still in the purple suit, he had read every word of it. Twice. Her name was Emma Calloway. She was 8 years old. She weighed 53 pounds. She was sitting in row 14, seat 7, wearing a pink dress her mother had ironed 3 times that afternoon because she wanted everything about tonight to be perfect. Emma hadn't spoken a full sentence to anyone outside her mother in nearly 2 years, 18 months earlier, following an accident that her family has never fully discussed publicly. Emma had gone quiet. Not gradually, suddenly, like a light switched off. Her teachers learned to communicate with her through handwritten notes passed across the desk. Her classmates stopped trying to include her after a while. Not out of cruelty, out of the helplessness children feel when they don't understand something they can't fix. Her speech therapist had tried everything. Progress was slow. Some weeks there was no progress at all. The silence around Emma had become so total, so familiar, that the adults in her life had quietly begun adjusting their expectations. But Emma had one exception to the silence. One place the quiet didn't follow her. Her bedroom. Door shut. Alone. She sang. Not humming, singing. Full lyrics, full melody, clear as water. She sang Prince psalms specifically, every word memorized, every note landed with a precision that no 8-year-old should naturally possess. Her mother, Diana, had first heard it through the wall on a Tuesday night in October 1987, had stood in the hallway with her hand pressed flat against the door, not breathing, afraid that if she made a single sound, it would stop. It didn't stop. Emma sang the entire song from beginning to end. Diana had slid down the wall and cried silently on the hallway floor. 3 weeks before the December concert, Emma did something that stopped Diana completely cold. She sat down at the kitchen table, took out a piece of wide-ruled notebook paper, and wrote a letter. Not to her teacher, not to her therapist. She addressed it to Prince, care of Paisley Park Studios, Chanhassen, Minnesota. She had looked up the address herself. The letter was short. 11 sentences, but the ones that mattered most came near the end, written in careful, deliberate second-grade handwriting. I don't talk anymore, but I sing your psalms when nobody can hear me. I think maybe if I heard you sing in person, I might find my voice again. I don't know if that makes sense. She signed it simply, Emma, age 8. Diana mailed it the next morning. She told herself not to expect anything back. She was right and completely wrong at the same time. Prince had read Emma's letter, standing alone in his dressing room at 7:22 p.m., 43 minutes before showtime. The folder had been sitting on his makeup table between a bottle of water and a set list printed in 14-point font. He almost didn't open it. He had a ritual before shows. Stillness, silence, complete internal focus. No distractions, no outside world. He read it once. Then he turned it face down on the table, stood there for a long moment staring at the wall, and read it again. Then he put on his guitar, walked to the stage, and didn't say a single word about it to anyone. 8 songs in, he was doing what he always did, controlling every molecule of energy in that building. The crowd was his, completely, absolutely his. And then his eyes swept row 12, row 13, row 14. He saw her. Not because she was loud, not because she was waving or jumping or screaming his name like the hundreds of other children in that arena. He saw Emma Calloway because she was the only completely still person in a building of 3,200 moving bodies. Sitting in seat 7, pink dress, hands folded in her lap, watching him with an expression he had not seen on a single face in 20 years of performing. Not excitement, not worship, something older and quieter than both of those things. He missed one chord. Just one. His guitar tech registered it from the wings and frowned. Nobody else in the building caught it. Prince caught it. He knew exactly why it happened. He finished the song, started the next one. His manager exhales from the wings, and for approximately 90 seconds, it looked like the night was going to continue exactly as planned. Then Prince stopped playing. He let the guitar hang from the strap against his chest and walked to the very edge of the stage and knelt down. And that single act, Prince kneeling, sent a visible wave of confusion through his entire crew, because in 20 years, nobody had ever seen him do it mid-show. 3,200 people pulled in one sharp collective breath. He looked directly into row 14. His microphone picked up his voice, and the Northrop's acoustics carried it to every corner of the hall. "Emma," he said. "Emma Calloway." The silence that followed was the loudest thing that had happened all night. Diana grabbed her daughter's arm without thinking. Emma didn't look at her mother. She was already looking at the stage, at the man in the purple suit kneeling at its edge, looking straight back at her like there were no other people in the room. "I got your letter," Prince said into the microphone, quiet and unhurried. "I read it 3 times. Someone in the balcony made a sound, half gasp, half sob. And then the entire arena went so still that people would later say they could hear the stage lights humming. You said you sing my songs when nobody can hear you." He paused. A full, deliberate, unrushed pause. "I'd like to hear." Emma Calloway stood up. She was 4 feet tall, and she walked toward that stage like she was the only person in the building. And in that moment, she was. A crew member lifted her onto the stage. She stood under the purple lights in her pink dress and looked up at Prince. He came down to one knee directly in front of her, eye level, close enough that she could have reached out and touched the sequins on his jacket. "You don't have to say anything," he told her, voice low, almost private despite the microphone. "Just sing if you want to, or don't. Either way, I see you." 8 seconds of silence. Then Emma opened her mouth and sang, "When Doves Cry." Her voice was clear, perfect, completely unafraid. The first person in the audience stood up at the 11th second, then another, then a third, and then it moved through that arena the way a wave moves through water, unstoppable, inevitable, section by section, balcony by balcony, until every single person in the Northrop Auditorium was on their feet for an 8-year-old girl who hadn't spoken a full sentence in 18 months. Prince didn't sing, didn't play, didn't move. He stayed on one knee beside her and let her have the entire stage. When Emma finished singing, the Northrop Auditorium did not erupt the way arenas erupt at the end of a great guitar solo or a pyrotechnic finale. It did something rarer and more powerful than that. It stayed standing in silence for 4 full seconds, 3,200 people holding the moment like it was something fragile, something that might shatter if they moved too fast. Then the applause came. And it was the kind of applause that has nothing to do with performance. It was the sound of people releasing something they hadn't known they were holding. Prince stood up. He took Emma's hand in his, walked her to the edge of the stage himself, and helped her down. Not a crew member, not a security guard, him. He watched her walk back up the aisle toward row 14 until she reached her mother. Diana Calloway had both hands pressed over her mouth. She was shaking. Backstage, Gary Levinson was already on the phone. The calls were coming from the tour's legal team, from the label's publicity department, from 3 different people whose entire job was to manage what Prince did and did not do in public. An unvetted child pulled on stage at a sold-out arena. No signed waiver, no prearranged press strategy. The words liability and precedent were being used with increasing urgency in a hallway 40 feet from the stage where Prince was still performing. Prince walked past all of them when he came off for a brief transition, didn't slow down, didn't make eye contact, went directly into his dressing room and closed the door. 22 minutes later, a knock. A young crew member, barely 20 years old, working his 3rd show on the tour, stood in the doorway holding a folded piece of paper. It had been passed hand to hand through 6 different people to reach him, each one somehow understanding that it needed to get there. He held it out without saying anything. Prince unfolded it, one line, written in Diana Calloway's handwriting on the back of a Northrop Auditorium program. She hasn't stopped talking since she came off that stage. He stood there reading it for a long moment. Then he folded it carefully, placed it in his inside jacket pocket, directly over his chest, and walked back out to finish the show. He played for another 55 minutes. Everyone who was there that night agreed it was the best he had ever sounded in Minneapolis. Not louder, not more technically brilliant, just truer, like something had been unlocked in him too. Gary Levinson was reassigned off the Love Sexy tour before the month was out. Prince never explained why. He didn't need to. Don't go anywhere, because what Prince said about Emma years later, in his own words, is the part of this story that will stay with you longest. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and keep watching. 20 years later, a journalist named Teray sat across from Prince inside Paisley Park for one of the rarest things in the music industry, A genuine, unhurried conversation with a man who almost never gave them. They talked about craft, about control, about what performance meant to someone who had built his entire life around it. Then Teray asked the question that changed the temperature of the room. Is there a moment, one specific moment, that changed how you understood what you were doing up there? Prince didn't answer immediately. He got up from his chair, crossed the room, opened a drawer in a studio console that had probably not been opened in front of another person in years, and came back holding a folded piece of paper. He didn't hand it over. He just held it. The way you hold something that belongs to you completely. "A little girl wrote me a letter," he said. "She told me she had lost her voice. She asked if music could give it back." He looked down at the paper for a moment. "I don't know if what I did that night helped her, or if she just helped herself. I've never been sure, but I kept the letter." He never said Emma's name publicly, never took credit, never turned it into an anecdote he told at dinner parties or award ceremonies. He gave one quote to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune the morning after the concert. 12 words, no elaboration, no follow-up interview requested. "I didn't do anything. She did everything." People who worked alongside him at Paisley Park in his later years recall that he referenced the Minneapolis girl. Never by name, always just that. When younger musicians came to him asking about the true purpose of live performance, his answer was always the same. The show isn't for the 3,000, it's always for the one. Prince Rogers Melson died on April 21, 2016. He left behind 39 studio albums, a vault of unreleased recordings so vast that music historians still cannot agree on how large it actually is, and a mythology so carefully constructed that the world is still trying to find the edges of it. But the 3,200 people who were inside the Northrop Auditorium on December 11, 1988, don't talk about the albums when they talk about that night. They don't talk about the light rigs or the guitar solos or the $2 million stage. They talk about 4 minutes and 17 seconds in the middle of a sold-out show, when the most controlled performer in the history of popular music lost control and chose, with complete awareness, to stay lost. Emma Calloway grew up in Minneapolis. She became a music teacher. She has never given a public interview. Her mother Diana confirmed it once. One paragraph in a local community newsletter, no photograph attached, that the night happened, that it changed their lives, and that they were grateful. She ended it with a single sentence that has stayed with everyone who ever read it. "Some things," Diana wrote, "are too important to turn into a story. And yet here we are, because some stories refuse to stay quiet, much like the little girl they belong to." Prince stopped his concert for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. He knelt on a stage in front of 3,000 people and told one child that she was seen. Sometimes that is the whole point of everything. If this story moved you, subscribe, share it with someone who needs it today, and drop a comment. What moment in your life did music find you exactly when you needed it most?